The night sky above the colony was dark and heavy. Clouds hung low, covering the moons. The streets were narrow and empty, lit only by weak lamps that flickered against the cold wind. The alien widow walked slowly, her cloak wrapped tight around her shoulders. But it gave little warmth. Her steps were heavy, her body weak, and her breath turned into pale mist with every exhale. She had been walking for hours, knocking on doors, hoping someone would open, but every door had closed to her. Some people cursed, others ignored her, a few even shouted threats. The colony had no place for outsiders, and she was the easiest to cast away. Her heart carried the weight of sorrow. Her mate was gone, taken by the war, her home destroyed. She had nothing left except her will to live. But even that will was fading fast. She had fought hunger, storms, and endless journeys. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt final. Warm lights spilled from the colony windows. Inside, families sat together, eating hot meals, laughing, and living in safety. She stood outside those walls, her body trembling, her soul empty. She was not one of them. She was never going to be. She stopped under a broken lamp. The pale light revealed her tired face. Her dark eyes, deep with grief, still held the faint spark of dignity. She would not beg. She would not kneel. Not yet. Her stomach ached with hunger. Her hands shook from cold. She thought about leaving the colony, beyond the walls, but she knew what waited outside. Snow, ice, silence, and creatures that hunted in the dark. If the cold did not kill her, the beasts would. She leaned against a wall, closing her eyes for just a moment. Memories came to her, her mate's voice, calm and strong, telling her she was brave, telling her she must never stop walking. That voice was gone now, replaced by the cruel laughter of colonists who had once thrown stones at her. A sound broke her thoughts. A door creaked open. She opened her eyes and froze. A human man stepped into the street, tall, wrapped in a heavy coat. He carried a small lantern that glowed softly against the night. For a moment, their eyes met. The widow stiffened. Her heart pounded. Should she run? Should she hide? No human had shown her kindness before. She waited for anger, for rejection. But the man did not shout. He did not call the guards. He only stood there, his breath visible in the freezing air. His eyes rested on her, not with hate, but with something she could not name. She turned quickly and walked away, pulling her cloak tighter. Her steps crunched in the snow. Behind her, she heard the faint creak of the lantern as the man shifted his weight. She expected his voice, harsh and commanding, but none came. Then, footsteps followed her, slow at first, then steady. The widow's chest tightened. Was he hunting her? Was this another cruel trick? She reached the corner and pressed against the wall. The wind cut across her face. The light of his lantern grew closer. She braced herself for violence. But instead, his voice came, low and calm. "You'll freeze out here." Her breath caught. Her eyes widened. No one had spoken to her in such a way for so long. She said nothing. Her pride kept her silent. Her fear told her to run, but her body was weak, her legs shaking, her breath heavy. The human stepped closer. The lantern light reached her face. He saw the hollow cheeks, the trembling hands, the eyes filled with grief. But he did not move closer than a few steps. He did not threaten. He did not push. He only watched. The colony was silent. No other doors opened. No other eyes cared. Only the two of them, a human and an alien widow, standing in the cold night. Her voice, when it came, was soft. "Why do you look at me? You should turn away like the others." His answer was quiet, because no one else would. Her heart trembled. Her mind warned her this was a lie. But her soul, desperate and broken, felt something stir, a spark she thought was gone. She did not walk away this time. She stood there, staring at him. The man raised the lantern higher. Its light spilled across the doorway of his home. The door stood open. Warmth glowed from inside. The widow swallowed. The cold pressed harder against her bones. Behind her stretched endless darkness. Before her was a door, open and waiting. Her hands clenched. She took a step forward, and then another. The man did not move, did not speak. Only the doorway glowed brighter as she drew near. At the threshold, she hesitated. The wind howled behind her. The colony had rejected her. But here, for the first time, a door had not closed. She lifted her eyes to his. And in that moment, she felt something she thought was lost forever: hope. The alien widow stood at the threshold, her body trembling from the cold. The human had left his door open, the warm glow spilling into the night like an invitation. For a long moment she hesitated, her pride clashing with her desperation. She had never been welcomed before, not since the day her mate was buried under alien soil. The man did not speak. He waited, silent, his lantern casting shadows across his face. His eyes held no anger, no disgust, only something she could not understand. At last, she stepped inside, her cloak dragging across the floor. The warmth of the room hit her skin, and she gasped softly. The house was small, wooden walls lined with shelves of tools and books. A fire crackled in the hearth, sending waves of heat across the space. The widow stood stiffly near the door, afraid to move, afraid this moment might break if she dared to breathe. The man set the lantern down and pulled off his gloves. He looked at her again, then at the chair near the fire. "Sit," he said simply. His voice was calm, firm but not unkind. She shook her head. Her body remained pressed against the door, ready to flee if he changed his mind. "I won't harm you," he added. The words felt strange, like he was reminding himself as much as her. She studied his face, searching for the lie, but his gaze did not waver. Slowly, uncertainly, she stepped toward the fire and lowered herself into the chair. Her hands stretched toward the flames, trembling. The heat bit into her frozen skin, stinging at first, then easing into comfort. For the first time in weeks, she felt warmth. She closed her eyes briefly, a sigh slipping from her lips. The man moved quietly around the small kitchen. His movements were steady, practiced. He poured hot liquid into a cup and placed it on the table beside her. The widow stared at it, then at him. Suspicion flickered in her eyes. Was it poisoned? Was this kindness only a cruel trick? But the steam rose sweetly, carrying the scent of herbs. Her hunger outweighed her doubt. Slowly, she lifted the cup to her lips and drank. The warmth spread through her body, easing the ache in her chest. Her eyes softened, and for the first time in a long time, her shoulders lowered in something close to relief. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was raw. "Why open your door? Why give me this?" The man leaned against the wall, his arms folded. His face was tired but steady. "Because no one else would," he said, the same words as before, but heavier now, as if they meant more than he wished to admit. The widow lowered her gaze. She did not trust him yet. She could not, but her heart carried a spark, fragile and alive. Outside, the colony stirred. Shadows moved across windows. Voices rose in anger. Word had spread quickly. Someone had taken the alien widow into their home. It was against the unspoken rule. No one helped outsiders, and those who did faced the wrath of the settlement. The man's neighbors whispered, muttered. Some came to his door and knocked, demanding answers. "She doesn't belong here," one growled. "You'll bring ruin on us all," shouted another. The widow's heart sank. Her hands clenched around the cup. She had seen this before, how kindness turned to fear, how fear turned to hate. She rose to her feet, ready to leave before he paid the price for her presence. But the man placed a hand on the door, keeping it closed. His jaw tightened. "She stays," he said firmly. His voice cut through the noise. The neighbors muttered, anger flaring, but they did not force the door. Not yet. They left with threats, promising to return. The widow turned to him, her eyes wide. "You risk yourself," she said. "They will punish you." He shrugged, though his shoulders were heavy. "Let them try." Silence filled the room again, broken only by the crackle of the fire. The widow sat slowly, her mind caught between fear and something else, something she had not felt in years. The human had chosen to protect her, even when his own people turned against him. For a long time, neither spoke. They sat in the firelight, strangers bound by the choice of a single open door. Outside, the colony plotted. The night was not over, and danger had only begun. The widow glanced toward the fire, her voice trembling but clear. "Perhaps you are a fool," she whispered. "But tonight, you are the only fool who saved me." The man almost smiled, a flicker at the edge of his lips. He did not answer. He only sat, his eyes on the flames. The storm outside grew louder, but inside the house, for the first time, there was warmth. And hope, fragile and small, but alive. The alien widow sat by the fire, her cloak still damp with snow. The warmth of the flames wrapped around her like a fragile blanket. She did not speak, and the human did not push her. Silence filled the small home, broken only by the soft crackle of burning wood. The man moved about the room quietly. He set bread on the table, placed a bowl of stew near the fire, and stepped back. His eyes studied her carefully, not with suspicion, but with caution. He knew she was like a wild creature, hurt, cornered, ready to flee at the smallest threat. She stared at the food, her body aching with hunger. Her pride held her back. Fear told her it was a trap, but her hands trembled. Her stomach growled. Slowly, she reached for the bread, breaking it into pieces. The first bite filled her with warmth, and tears stung her eyes. She had not eaten real food in days, maybe weeks. The man sat in the chair across from her, his posture calm, his voice steady. "Eat," he said. She did. Though her eyes never left his, her heart still whispered warnings. But the fire, the food, the stillness, these things began to soften her guard. After a time, her voice rose, thin but clear. "Why risk this? Why help me?" He leaned back, folding his arms. His gaze shifted to the fire. "Because I know what it means to be alone," he said. The words carried a weight she did not understand, but she heard the truth in them. Her hands shook as she placed the bowl down. Her eyes dropped to the floor. She had no reply. No one had ever spoken to her like this, not since her mate was alive. Outside, the colony was restless. She could hear distant voices, footsteps on the street. They would not forget her presence here. The man knew it as well. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He only poked at the fire, sparks rising into the air. Night stretched on. The storm outside raged, but inside the house the fire held strong. At last, exhaustion weighed on the widow's body. She swayed in the chair, her eyelids heavy. "You should rest," the man said quietly. She stiffened, shaking her head. "No," she whispered. "If I close my eyes, I may wake to find myself thrown into the cold again." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. Then he stood and pulled a blanket from the shelf. He placed it near her chair but did not touch her, did not force her. "Then stay awake if you must," he said, "but at least stay warm." The widow stared at the blanket. Her throat tightened. Slowly, she lifted it over her shoulders. Her body curled into the chair, and though she fought sleep, the fire's warmth was stronger than her fear. Her breathing slowed. Her head rested against the wall. The man watched her, silent. He had not planned this. He had not asked for it. But now she was here, and his choice could not be undone. The colony would come. He knew it. Yet when he looked at the widow sleeping by the fire, he did not feel regret. Hours passed. Dawn painted pale light across the horizon. The widow stirred, her eyes opening slowly. For a moment, she panicked, her body jerking upright. But then she saw the fire, the blanket, the human sitting nearby, his eyes half closed from lack of sleep. He had stayed awake to watch over her. Confusion crossed her face. "You guarded me," she said. He shrugged, his voice tired but calm. "You needed it." Her heart tightened. She wanted to speak more, to ask why, to demand answers, but the words would not come. Instead, silence settled between them again. A knock rattled the door. The widow froze, her eyes widened. The man rose slowly, his expression dark. He opened the door to find 2 colony guards standing outside. Their armor glinted in the morning light. "She is here," one guard said coldly. "The widow, you must give her up. It is the law of the colony." The man's shoulders stiffened. His hand gripped the door. "She stays," he said firmly. The guards exchanged a look. One sneered. "You will regret this, human." They turned and marched away, but their words hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The widow's hands shook. She rose to her feet. "I should leave. If I stay, they will destroy you." But the man shook his head, his voice steady. "If you walk into the cold, you will die. If they come for you, then let them come. I will not send you away." Her chest ached. Her throat tightened with unspoken words. She had been rejected everywhere, abandoned by all. But here stood a human, defying his own kind to protect her. She lowered her gaze, her voice a whisper. "Perhaps you are more than a fool." He said nothing, only turned back to the fire. The widow sat again, torn between fear and something unfamiliar, something fragile, something that felt like belonging. The colony was rising against them, but inside the small home, for the first time, she was not alone. The morning passed slowly. The widow remained near the fire, her eyes on the flames. Her body was warm now, but her heart carried a heavy weight. She knew the colony would not stay silent. The guards had left, but their threat echoed in her mind. The man moved about his small home, fixing tools, preparing food. He did not speak much, but his presence was steady. His calmness confused her. She expected anger, regret, or fear. Instead, he acted as though her being there was natural. By midday, the whispers outside grew louder. Shadows moved past the windows. The colony had heard the news. Daniel, the human, had broken the rule. He had given shelter to the alien widow. Knocks shook the door, harsh and demanding. Daniel opened it only a crack. A group of neighbors stood outside, their faces twisted with anger. "You endanger us all," one man spat. "She is cursed. She brings nothing but death," a woman shouted. "Cast her out before it is too late." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She stays," he said, his voice calm but sharp. The neighbors shouted, their voices overlapping. They spoke of laws, of safety, of punishment. The widow's heart pounded. She wanted to flee, to save him from this storm, but her body stayed frozen in the chair. One man pointed at Daniel. "If you defy us, you will be cast out as well." Daniel's hand gripped the door harder. His eyes burned with quiet fire. "Then cast me out," he said. "But she will not go into the cold." Gasps filled the air. The neighbors stepped back, shocked by his words. None of them expected resistance. They muttered, threatened, and finally walked away. But their eyes promised they would return. The widow stared at him when he closed the door. Her voice shook. "Why? Why destroy yourself for me?" Daniel turned from the door, his shoulders heavy. "Because it is the right thing," he said simply. Her heart twisted. She had heard many words in her life. Orders, insults, lies, but rarely truth. And in his voice she heard nothing but truth. The day faded into night. The colony grew restless. More voices carried through the streets. Some wanted her gone. Others wanted Daniel punished. Fear was spreading, and fear always turned to violence. The widow sat quietly, her mind racing. Every breath felt heavy. She thought of leaving while he slept, slipping into the cold so he would be free. But when she looked at the fire, when she saw the blanket he had given her, she could not move. Her body longed for safety. Her heart longed for hope. Late that night, there was another knock, this time louder, harsher. Daniel opened the door. Two guards stood with torches. Their eyes glowed with suspicion. "You defy the colony," one said. "The council has spoken. The alien must leave, or you will face exile." Daniel did not flinch. His voice was firm. "I will not send her into death." The guards sneered. "Then the council will decide your fate." They left, their boots echoing against the frozen ground. The widow stood, her chest tight. "You cannot fight them all," she whispered. "They will destroy you because of me." Daniel turned toward her, his eyes steady. "Then let them come." Her throat burned with unshed tears. No one had ever chosen her over themselves. No one had ever stood between her and death. Her kind had abandoned her. The colony hated her. Yet here was a human, alone but unshaken. She sat again, her hands trembling. The fire cast shadows across her face. Inside her heart, two battles raged, fear and trust. For years, fear had ruled her. But tonight, trust began to grow, fragile but alive. The night stretched long. Outside, voices gathered again, angry, louder than before. The colony's patience was breaking. The widow knew a storm was coming, not of snow and wind, but of people. Still, when she looked at Daniel, sitting by the fire, unyielding, she felt something she had thought lost forever. For the first time since her mate's death, she felt she was not alone. The colony was against them, but inside this small home, she had found a spark of hope, and that spark refused to die. The days passed slowly. The colony remained hostile, whispers of anger spreading through the streets like fire. Yet inside Daniel's small home, time moved differently. The alien widow, once cold and trembling, began to find her strength again. At first, she stayed silent. her eyes always wary. She expected him to change his mind, to tell her to leave, but he never did. Each morning he placed food on the table. Each evening he left the door unlocked, not as a trap, but as an act of trust. One night, she broke her silence. "Why do you not fear me?" she asked softly. Daniel looked up from repairing a broken tool. His voice was calm. "Because you are not my enemy." Her chest tightened. No one had spoken such words to her before, not even her own people at the end. They had left her behind because she was a widow, because she was seen as weak. Yet this human treated her as if she still mattered. Slowly, she began to help. At first, small things. Washing bowls, sweeping the floor, placing wood by the fire. Her hands were clumsy, her body weak, but each task gave her purpose. Daniel said nothing, but she saw the faint nods, the quiet acceptance. One evening, Daniel returned from the colony market with a small bundle of herbs. She watched as he placed them in boiling water, filling the room with a soothing smell. He handed her a cup, and she frowned. "What is this?" He gave a small shrug. "Something that helps me sleep when the nights are too long." She sipped, and for the first time in years, she felt her body rest without fear. The fire crackled, her eyelids grew heavy, and she allowed herself to drift into sleep, trusting that the door would not open to harm her. The bond between them grew not through grand words, but through quiet moments. Daniel taught her human customs, how to use certain tools, how to cook simple meals. In return, she sang in her own tongue, low melodies that spoke of lost stars and forgotten journeys. Daniel listened in silence, his eyes thoughtful. He did not understand the words, but he understood the sorrow and the strength hidden within them. Outside, however, the colony's anger deepened. Neighbors gossiped. The guards watched Daniel's home. The council gathered, planning what must be done. One afternoon, Daniel stepped out to fetch supplies. The widow stayed inside, watching through the narrow window. Children passed by, throwing stones at the door. Their laughter stung, reminding her of her isolation. She turned away, clutching the blanket tighter. When Daniel returned, he found her sitting silently, her face pale. "They will never stop," she whispered. "They will break you for protecting me." Daniel placed the supplies down and looked at her. His jaw tightened. "Let them try," he said. The words were firm, carrying a weight that steadied her heart. The days turned colder. The colony waited, tensions rising. Yet in that small home, warmth grew stronger. The widow found herself watching Daniel when he worked. She noticed his tired eyes, the scars on his hands, the loneliness he carried quietly. One night she spoke again, her voice low. "You are alone, like me." Daniel did not deny it. He only gave a small nod. Yes. Their silence after that was not heavy. It was shared, comfortable. For the first time in years, the widow felt she belonged, not to a people, not to a place, but to a single soul who refused to turn her away. But peace could not last. The council's patience had ended. In the shadows of the colony, leaders whispered, "We must make an example of him," they said. "If one man defies us, others will follow." The widow felt it too. She sensed the storm drawing closer. Each knock at the door made her heart race. Each voice outside carried a threat. Yet when she looked at Daniel, sitting by the fire, unshaken, she found strength in his presence. She whispered into the quiet night, words more to herself than him. "Perhaps fate did not abandon me after all." Daniel glanced at her, his eyes steady. "Perhaps not," he said. The bond had grown, fragile but real, and though the colony moved against them, inside that small home they had built something the council could not touch, trust, and the first spark of something even stronger. The nights grew heavier. The colony no longer whispered. It roared. Rumors spread of punishment, of exile, of force. The council had spoken. The alien widow could not stay, and the man who defied them would pay. Daniel knew they would come. He sharpened his tools, strengthened his door. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. The widow watched him, her chest tight. She wanted to tell him to let her go, to save himself. But every time she opened her mouth, the words died. One evening, the storm arrived. Torches lit the street. Boots pounded against the frozen ground. The colony guards marched to his home, their armor gleaming. Their leader stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Open the door. Daniel, the alien is not welcome. Hand her over, or face the law. The widow stood, her heart racing. She touched his arm, her voice trembling. Let me go. Please, if I leave, they will spare you. But Daniel shook his head, his voice firm. If they take you, they take me too. The guards banged on the door, shouting demands. Daniel pulled it open, standing tall in the doorway. Behind him, the widow stood in the firelight, her cloak wrapped tight, her face pale but proud. She is under my protection, Daniel declared. His voice carried through the night. The guard sneered. You risk everything for her. Why? She is nothing. She is alive, Daniel said. That is reason enough. The crowd behind the guards murmured. Some shouted in anger, calling for punishment. Others watched in silence, unsure. For the first time, doubt flickered in their eyes. The widow stepped forward, her voice breaking. Stop, I will go with them, she said. Her body shook, but her eyes were steady. I cannot let you suffer for me. Daniel's hand rose, blocking her path. No, he said. You have suffered enough. The guards drew closer, ready to strike. The tension crackled like lightning. The crowd pressed nearer, watching. The widow's breath quickened. She thought this would be the end. But Daniel did not move. His voice rose, strong and unshaken. If you want her, you will have to take me too. The guards hesitated. Their leader narrowed his eyes. Then both of you will fall, he growled. He raised his hand, ready to give the order. And yet, in that moment, something shifted. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A woman stepped forward, her voice uncertain. Why must she die? She has harmed no one. Another voice followed. Daniel is a fool. Yes, but he is right. She is alive. Is that not enough? The guards faltered. Their leader glared at the crowd, but hesitation spread. Fear and anger began to clash with something new. Doubt. The widow's heart raced. She had expected cruelty, but not this. For the first time, she saw cracks in the wall of hate. Still, the guards stood firm. The council will not allow this. Their leader barked. Daniel stepped closer, his fists clenched. Then let the council face me. The standoff stretched long. The firelight flickered across their faces. The cold wind howled. The widow stood frozen, caught between terror and awe. She whispered softly, only to herself, "Why do you fight so hard for me?" But Daniel heard, his eyes never leaving the guards. He answered, "Because no one else would." The night hung heavy. The colony held its breath. The choice lay in the air, violence or something greater. The standoff stretched into silence. The guards waited for the order. The crowd pressed closer. The air was sharp, filled with fear. The widow stood frozen, her breath shallow, her fate balanced on the edge of a blade. Daniel did not move. His body blocked the doorway, his voice steady. "If she falls, I fall with her." The guard's leader growled, his hand still raised, but the crowd murmured louder now. Their voices carried doubt. Some spoke of mercy, others of justice. Fear was no longer the only sound in the night. A young boy stepped forward, his small voice trembling. "She never hurt anyone," he said. His mother pulled him back, but his words had already struck. The widow's chest tightened, her eyes stung with tears. She had been hated, cursed, ignored. Yet here, for the first time, a human child had spoken for her. The guards hesitated. The leader's anger burned. But even he could see the shift. The crowd was no longer united in hate. Daniel's courage had cracked the wall, and through it, light began to shine. "You defy the council." The leader spat. Daniel's eyes did not waver. "I defy cruelty," he replied. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, slowly, the guards lowered their hands. Their leader snarled, but did not strike. He turned sharply, his armor clattering. "This is not the end," he warned. Then they marched away, leaving the crowd uncertain, divided. The widow's knees weakened. She almost collapsed, but Daniel's hand steadied her. His eyes held no fear, only quiet strength. "It is over for now," he said. The crowd lingered, some whispering in anger, others in thought. A few even looked at the widow differently. Not with warmth, but not with pure hatred either. Seeds of change had been planted, fragile but real. When the street finally emptied, Daniel closed the door. The fire still burned inside. The widow sat slowly, her hands trembling. She whispered, "You risked everything. Daniel sat across from her, his face calm. "You are not nothing," he said, "and I will not let the world treat you as if you are." Her heart ached. For so long she had carried only loss, only rejection. But now, in this small home, she had found something she thought lost forever: hope. Days turned into weeks. The colony still watched, still whispered, but no one dared break Daniel's door again. The guards had failed to bend him, and his defiance had given others pause. Some even began to question the council's rule. The widow worked beside him now. She no longer sat in silence. She cooked meals, mended clothes, and shared stories of her people. He listened, not with pity, but with respect. In turn, he taught her the ways of his world. The two of them, so different, began to build something together. One night, as the fire glowed low, the widow looked at him, her voice steady for the first time. "The colony rejected me. They closed their doors, but you opened yours." She paused, her eyes shining. "And that changed everything." Daniel did not answer with grand words. He only gave a small nod, but his eyes told her the truth. He had no regret. The widow leaned back, her heart lighter. The storm outside still raged, but in here, warmth lived. She had found shelter not only from the cold, but from despair. The colony had rejected her, but one human's door had given her hope, and hope was stronger than fear.